Good evening. My name is S. Brian Jones, and I am the Assistant Dean of Diversity and Equity for the Arts, and also the program lead for the new BA in Writing for Diversity and Equity in Theater and Media. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm going to be talking to you for about the next 13 to 17 minutes about this new major and how you can be a part of being a pioneer of this new major if you should have interest in it. But first, I do want to start with thanking our admissions, recruitment, and enrollment team who put this webinar together for us this evening. And specifically, I'd like to thank Renee, who just helped us with our wonderful technical difficulties. Thank you, Renee. And Morgan, who will be facilitating our questions and doing the moderation when we do our questions and answer. Morgan was from our admissions and Renee is from our enrollment. Okay, but before we get started this evening, I like to laugh and I enjoy life. So to get you into the mind of this major, I'm just going to ask you to take a quick second, grab a piece of paper and a pen, or maybe just a blank document on your laptop or your desktop computer if you're sitting there. And I want you to write down these questions. I'm not looking for an answer right now. I just want you to think about these questions as I am talking for the next 13 to 17 minutes. And Morgan, I would ask you if you could to type up these questions in the chat area if you can. I will definitely repeat them, okay? So the first question I would like you to percolate in your mind as we are speaking this evening about the major is, what are you passionate about? And it can be a multiple of things. What are you passionate about? What drives you? What motivates you? What gets you up out of bed? What makes you want to fight? What draws you to the table to create? Okay? How do you make sure your authentic speaking voice is in the room? Again, I'll say that. How do you make sure your authentic speaking voice is in the room? So how do you put your real voice into a space? How do you make sure there's space for it? How do you make sure there is authenticity in your writing? How do you ensure there is authenticity in your writing? So when you write, this is obviously a writing major, how do you ensure there is authenticity in what you say when you are writing it? That is question 3. When we are speaking of the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, how do you put your authentic voice in the room from that lens? Question number 4, when we're speaking of the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, how do you put your authentic speaking voice in the room through that lens? Question 4, how do you put your authentic writing voice in the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion? You may not have the answer to this, but I want you to percolate this question to think about, how do you put your authentic writing voice in the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion? How do you do that as a writer? And do you do that as a writer? And if you don't, what do you need to get from this program so that you can, in fact, do that? And then the last question, which will start me as I will move into the major, what it's about, is what does writing for diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you? So when you heard about this major and you heard about this webinar, what percolated in your mind? What did you think that meant, writing for diversity, equity, and inclusion? I'll give it time for that to come up. What does writing for diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you? So give some time for people to finish that up. That last question is, what does writing for diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you? So before we jump into the major, I'm going to give you a little bit of history about me and who I am and how I came to be here at Pace University. Again, it is S. Brian Jones. The S is for Stanley. I will take the mystery of that away because it says Stanley Jones up there, and I usually change it to say S. Brian Jones. But the S is for Stanley, and I do go as S. Brian Jones. I have a 30-year career in the arts. I am a working artist. I am a professional writer. I most recently have a film called The Dutchman's Pipe. We just won the Best Original Ideas Award at this past weekend at the New York Chain Film Festival, the 8th annual one. So what I bring to the table for this program is I'm looking to put forth for people who will have working careers as writers. And how do we develop that path for you to get that working career as a writer? There is no one direct path. It is the path that you choose to develop to get there. And so hopefully with this major, if you have an interest of expressing your voice through the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, this will be a major that will in fact interest you to go down that path. While you have that pen and paper handy, you can take down my email address, which is bjones4@pace.edu. Should any questions or you need clarifications on anything that we discussed during this webinar that I'm having with you this evening. Again, that is bjones4@pace.edu. When I say there is no direct path as far as how do you get to be a writer, specifically in the creative venue, I started my career, my professional career as an actor, doing tours, doing regional theater. Then I went into administration, then arts education, then writing for theaters, and then also as a playwright and a screenwriter. So over the past 30 years, I've developed this full, robust career that involves all these components. In addition to that, I have over 35-year experience in diversity, equity, and inclusion, starting very young when I was in high school, in my commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we get voices in the room. A little history on how this major came to be, just so you can get a little idea of the opportunity that's before you today. So this major was first developed in 2019 and was initially going to be going through our PACE Performing Arts program. As it was developed, it was grant was written to the Edmund D. Rothschild Foundation, which is one of the funders that is sponsoring this program and is responsible for finding me and bringing me here to Pace University. They were specifically looking for someone who had a writing background, specifically as a playwright or with film and television credits, who had the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and had an education background, which is what all of that I do have. When I came on board here at PACE, I looked at the proposal that was given to us about what this major would be, and I asked the question, well, what do we mean when we say BA in Writing for Diversity, Equity, and Theater? Are we in fact speaking about diversity officers, people who are writing technical information about diversity, or are we talking about diversifying the writer's room? They're very different things. The conversation led to, it was about diversifying the writer's room. Excuse me one moment while I take a sip. So in diversifying the writer's room, I knew immediately that I needed to reach out to my contacts who are working artists in the industry in film, television, narrative gaming, and theater to see what is lacking. How come the writer's room are not diversified? And what in fact could we do to in fact diversify? In addition to that, we put together a team of faculty here at Pace University that has already been there at Pace, and they are made up of our English department, our Pace Performing Arts, and our Film and Screen Studies. And they worked with me in tandem with the industry professionals and our funders to revise this major and make it in a way that would actually give the student a voice to grow and create their own table. So what we end up working towards, instead of trying to change the narrative, how do we get to the table? We came to how do we create our own table by which people will want to come and get our stories. That taking the onus that your voice has an important place and that we should make space for your voice. A lot of stuff I used to hear in my own work is I write from a strong female voice. And I used to hear often, if I would just change my name or drop the Brian off or left the Stanley out, that I would get, in fact, more work. But then that does close my voice out of the space. So what we wanted to do is to say students who wanted to have this voice, who wanted to write from this social justice, social advocacy lens, from this lens of creative storytelling that is about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that they would, in fact, could do that. But how do we design and build a program that in fact offers that? And so what we did, I'm going to share my screen, is we came together and we put together a program, one second, that really speaks to an interdisciplinary writing major, offering courses and experiences in the Dyson College of Arts and Science, departments of film and screen studies in English, and Pace School of Performing Arts. The program will cross traditional disciplinary boundaries, offering courses in a variety of writing and media-related genres, promoting authentic dialogue about diversity and embracing the complexity of underlying social and historical issues. Students will generate new work continuously, fostering development of a disciplined, self-regulated writing process, culminating with the creation of a writing portfolio to ready the student for their next step into a professional career as a writer in film, television, theater, and media, with a focus on stories promoting diversity, equity, and inclusions. One of the first things that I wanted to look at is to make sure that, having been in writer's room, having produced theater for as long as I have, is to give a student enough of an opportunity, enough of a portfolio, so that when they left or graduated from a program, there would be multiple opportunities for them to gain access into the world of the arts. And so that is why you will be continuously writing through this program, with the idea that you will leave with an approved portfolio by a writing professional who has sat in a writer's room, for you to understand how do you get through that door and create your own table while you're doing that. Our experience with that is that we had to have complementary innovative learning experience that complement in-room classroom learning. So it can't just be going and taking the classes and just doing the portfolio. We have to connect you with professionals in the field and give you as many opportunities of exposure for your voice to get heard and be seen. And so with that, I'm going to read this next section. Aligning with Pace University's core strategy to provide students with innovative approaches to education to appointment, a 2-year fellowship program will support eligible participants in their 2nd and 3rd years, funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. The fellowship complements classroom curriculum with a comprehensive range of pre-professional experiential learning opportunities. The great thing about this fellowship, it is if you are a rising freshman to sophomore, or rising sophomore to junior. And this fellowship offers students $11,000 in funding, $3,000 for your spring semester, $5,000 for a summer internship, and $3,000 for your fall semester. And the idea is that the student would not have necessarily to work, but could focus more on their classes and other activities, and yet again to supplement their education to further make a path for them to break through and be successful in the field of the arts. Students in this major will graduate with the skills and experience to translate education into meaningful employment as writers in theater and media arts. Faculty mentors, now this is very important, I want you to hear this. Faculty mentors will assist students with graduate school applications, career and job search guidance, and support for the Senior Capstone Project Showcase. Almost continuously when students start in this program, they will be connected with a professional mentor that works in this field. The idea with a funder was to really give students an access to what is happening out in the field, not just from a classroom theoretical standpoint, but from an actual in-practice field practice. Moving on to, I'm just going to move up here for a quick second and talk about the Capstone Project. So our Capstone courses, during senior year, students in this major are required to register for Senior Writing Portfolio 1 and 2. Partnering with Pace faculty and arts industry professionals, students will finally hone their writing portfolio with specific focus on creating a capstone writing project to be presented at a final showcase. Now this gets really exciting. That means over this course of these next 4 years, should you decide to major in this major, you will continue to work towards a final writing project, be it a screenplay, be it a play, be it in a narrative gaming, being it something newer out of the box that we decide together. You will then have the opportunity to showcase this work. Now here becomes the exciting part of this. We are building partnerships, and one of the partnerships that I am working with that has already taken an interest in this part of the program is Lincoln Center. What they have offered to us is they are very interested in this idea of doing this senior project with the students' work, partnering with professional artists and actors who would then read the work of the final students. And when we do a big production, invite people in the industry, and we'd make it a big to-do for a final senior showcase. That unto itself is exciting and really sets this major apart for really readying the student for success in their future. But it doesn't stop there. I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now. One of the primary parts of this program is really having the student's voice as a part of this program. And one of the reasons that we are here today is that this program was going to start at a later time, but everyone who heard it and read it said, no, we've got to get this program started now. And again, I will thank the admissions recruitment and enrollment team for making this happen, because they got behind this because they're just as excited as the leaders of PACE are, as the funder is, about this one-of-a-kind major. Now, this is where you come into play. One of the things that I am very passionate about is education and student success. And I know student success does not happen if the student's voice is not in the room. So the unique opportunity that you students have, specifically being the first students to come into the major, is to be the pioneer and set the tone as to the future cohorts that will come into this major. There will be consistently, you will hear from me with opportunities for us to come together, for opportunities for us to grow as a cohort. But more than that, when I say I'm committed to student success, and I think maybe many of you can maybe pick this up for me at this point, is Dean Jones will be calling you and ask you, have you applied for the fellowship? And if you have not applied for the fellowship, you're going to have to give me a good reason why you did apply for the fellowship. And I say all that to say to you is that I am invested in your success beyond PACE, through PACE, but to becoming a working writer in the lens of diversity and inclusion. And I know you can do it because I have done it as a writer. And that's what I mean about setting your own path, setting your own tone. It's a journey, not a destination. We together will take this journey. And one more thing I will say before I go over some of the classes you will take in this major and then open it up for questions and answers, is the one unique thing I wanted to give to students in this major is we are developing a student-run writing conference, okay? And when I mean that the students will run it, I am adamant that it will be a student-run writing conference. I've already identified someone who from the outside who will come and work as the project coordinator, not necessarily a team person at PACE, we have to have someone on, but who will come and work with students on how to organize their own writers' conference. And the writing conference will be for DEI through the lens of the work of Langston Hughes, who is a great American writer, as I'm sure some of you know, and if you don't, I do encourage you to go look up and learn more about Langston Hughes. Lincoln Center has also got excited about that program and hosting that writers' conference for the students. This is important because this gives you your own ownership. It teaches you the process of how to do the work before you're actually out in the field. And obviously, this is something that I am committed to seeing students get their voice into as to what they want in the room, what type of conference benefits them. So with this, along with other special programs, we have a day of service. We have working with the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, opportunity for students in this major to get their anti-racist education badges. So there are multiple opportunities for students. The first thing that will happen is the cohort will come together. I will then offer opportunity for students to speak to me, and then we will continue to build the program forward as far as special programs. But some of the classes that you will be taking, I did want to go through that. There are 49 credits to the major, and that does include 3 credits for an internship and the Senior Capstone 1 and Senior Capstones 2. The internship isn't scheduled currently until your spring of your junior year, and the capstone courses are set for Senior Semester 1 and Senior Semester 2. But some other classes that are part of this major are History of Diversity History of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion in American Entertainment, Gender, Race, and Class, Introduction to Critical Race Theory, Disability in Home and Community, Creative Writing for Drama Structures, Creative Writing for Film Scenarios, Creative Writing for Social Justice, Queer Theory and Feminism, Theater for Social Change, writing for television, advanced screenwriting, internship, which I mentioned, advanced playwriting, Capstone Course 1, and Capstone Course 2, with a final showcase. There are 21 elective credits available, so there are some minors that you can certainly, that would work in tandem for the major. But here's what I would say to you about this major. If this is something that you really do think that this speaks to me, I have a voice, I know I have a voice, I want to write from this creative lens. Again, I would encourage you, I have cleared my schedule for next week. I will be in city, and I would encourage you to schedule an appointment with me. Again, it's bjones4@pace.edu. And what we will do is we'll sit down and we'll look at what your career trajectory is. Again, I am passionate about student success. So I don't want you to come into this major and you think like, well, I think I might want to be a journalist, and because that would be getting you down the wrong path. But the major is open enough to have some flexibility as far as the direction we want this major to go into, with specificity to special programs and summer programs. The major map as it is pretty much in standing. It's currently being going before review committees for approval. And we are now committed to making sure that this program becomes one of the most national programs, but also a global program, because it is one of a kind. It has not been done before. And everyone that I introduce it to within the arts community are feeling like this is a pioneering program that will in fact change things. And why will it change things? If you were writing stories that have a diversity, equity, inclusion basis, then you then probably are hiring crew and actors and producers and people who can then speak to that lens and that voice. So it then in fact has a ripple effect. And so you can ask yourself, do I want to be a part of having a ripple effect of change through the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion in a creative writing vein? I'm going to stop there because I did want to offer time for questions and answers. I did want to give an overscope because I do have a gift to gab, in case anyone hasn't told that yet. And I do want to open it up for some questions and for some opportunities. Keeping in mind that if you want to have a further conversation of how we can really build this out and talk about how you can have a future of this, I do encourage you to book a one-on-one appointment with me. I'm available all Tuesday and Wednesday, and the only time I'm not available next Thursday is between 10 and 11:30 when I have Dean's meeting. Okay, but right now I will turn it over to Morgan, who I will let facilitate any questions or any follow-up for there.
Well, first off, thank you so much, S. Brian. That was a great overview, and I'm not a student, but it seems like such an exciting opportunity, and I definitely hope everyone who's out there listening right now takes advantage of the one-on-one, appointments that you were offering. It's really great when you're able to connect with a faculty member and hear exactly from them what and also give feedback on what the program's going to be like. As of right now, we haven't gotten any questions in the chat yet, but now is your opportunity. We do have a couple minutes right now before we finish things up to ask those questions and have them answered for the group. So if you do have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I guess a few questions I would have for you is more like logistical things first. Like, so when will this major be available to students? When would they, be taking classes related to all of this?
So that students can enroll in the major now. What we are encouraging students to do specifically if they are freshmen and undecided sophomores, which is who we invited to this, was to focus on their core classes. But then again, that comes down to that one-on-one because it allows me to see where they are in their schedule right now and to advise them best what is the best class for them to take. That's why I'm encouraging, if you do have other interests, to sit and talk with me, because then it lets me know where you are on your schedule. I didn't want to sit on that and try to go through everyone's schedule. But yes, the first thing we do, if you do want to enroll in the major, is certainly to sit with me, and then we can determine where you are and then what classes, if you are not registered, what you are taking that could work towards the major.
Okay, great. Nathan said that was his question as well, so I'm glad I asked it. We did have another question come in. How is the application process for the major? So is there anything special or outside of the ordinary when it comes to applying for this major?
There is not. It's really more about sitting, and I wanted to keep it open. I wanted to keep it open because I kept getting, well, are we going to put requirements on this? And I was like, I want it open for those students who have an interest and know that they have a voice in social justice and advocacy. but in from a creative lens, but may not necessarily. I didn't want to shut anyone out. So with that, I wanted to keep it open and offer the opportunity to sit with the student and say, well, where are you going? Let's really talk about this. Because I can talk about my own history as far as working in professional theater and film and television and what led me to Pace University. And I would like to offer the same to the student.
No other questions just yet. We do have we have time for maybe one or two more questions. So throw those in the chat and we can ask those out loud.
Are any clarifications that you might need or anything else you might want to know?
Yeah, and then is there, I guess, is this already on the website? Is this available for
It
students?
is already on the
See
website. So yes, you can go to the website. It is listed as a fact sheet. So all the information is there on the website. It does tell you to contact me for more information. And I will then go ahead and get you set up for how to go about getting the major set and getting moving on the major. And yes, it is on the website and you can go there. I did want to mention one other thing about the Pace Storytelling Fellowship for writing. The application is coming up for that. So that application is already in. I spoke to that. And students, even if you don't take this major, you can certainly apply to that major, that fellowship. And that was the one that I mentioned. It's for rising sophomores or rising juniors. The application will be coming out in September, and the contact that is Lucia Burns at pace.edu. But look for that. That is the Pace Storytelling Fellowship for Diversity and Inclusion.
Okay, great. And then I did put a link to the major information on the website. So you had shared the fact sheet, but in case anybody wanted to reference back to it, you'll find it at the website I put in the chat. And then there was another question that came in. So for students who maybe are not necessarily interested in television and film, would this still be something that they could pursue for a career related to this major? So
yeah, it's not just on television, film. It is really intended with a creative writing lens. But again, this is something that I would offer for a deeper conversation. Because the great thing about this is a developing major. So obviously there are people got together and said, here's what we want to do for major. Again, why it's important to have the student voice in the room. And I would encourage students to then engage me with the conversation. Because it allows me to go back to the leaders and the funder and say, hey, we might have missed this component. We might want to include this component as far as including this for. And the follow-up to that is what is specifically what you mean about as far as writing? Are you talking writing from an essay point of view? Or are you just talking a different form of creative writing? It would be more of the follow-up question I would have.
Okay, great. So again, I guess the advice for that one is set up a one-on-one appointment, talk through all of those things that you're thinking about or those specifics that maybe you're thinking about compared to your career and when you hear the description of the major. I don't see any other questions in the chat right now. So I think maybe what we'll do, I'm just going to post your email in the chat again once more so that if people haven't had the chance to grab that yet, that they'll be able to do that. And yeah, I guess if you had any kind of final words or anything you wanted to say.
Yeah, I do have a few final words I want to say. Is just take the opportunity, if this is something that you do think like, well, I'm not sure, and you want to think through it, just take the opportunity to set up a meeting with me. We can do a quick 10 minutes call, we can do a Zoom meeting, or we can do it in person. I would rather have you think through it and talk about it in this larger opportunity than to not do it. And I want to say thank you to everyone first and foremost for joining us. And remember, it's not often that you have an opportunity to be a pioneer on a program and really get your voice in the room and how that program is going to be created for legacy. So I do encourage students, if they have an interest and they want to do that, to be a part of designing a one-of-a-kind program, that they go ahead and reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to give them more information about the program. And thank you everyone for joining us today. It's really been a pleasure for me.
Thank you as well, Brian. This was great. And have a wonderful rest of your evening, everybody.
Thank you much. Sign up. Give me a call.